Give it a second. It should pop up.
Okay.
This enhanced broadcasting thing on OBS and Twitch, you should definitely look at it. It's pretty good.
You keep talking about it. I definitely want to get the dual streaming thing going and see if I can get that to work on my internet.
Because then you don't have to worry about transcoding. You'll always have it because you're the one doing transcoding with your video card, and it works. It works really good.
I've got us on Twitch. YouTube is a little behind, it seems. Come on, YouTube. You're our main streaming platform. Stream is offline.
Not gone? Whoa.
I see us on Twitch. I don't see us on YouTube.
Oh, there's YouTube.
There it is. It's just slower.
Yep. It's just slow. It's like me. It's one of those days for YouTube.
Jesus.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix the intro video. Oh, it's already on me. Everything's set up and I have to do nothing. It's great when we do a bunch of episodes of two people on the ball and everything. Even did a thumbnail ahead of time. It's great.
It's like we got plans to not be here for a week.
It's like I got vacation coming. Call this sweeps.
Sweeps week.
Sweeps weeks. It's there's a channel I watch, Giant Bomb, all the time. I've been watching them for years, and they decided next week, just for the hell of it, they're doing B week. I'm like, stealing our bit. It's all B themed.
Pick another letter, buddy.
Yeah, 25 letters you can pick from. You had to pick B. Son of a bitch. Sorry, YouTube.
We'll do G week then.
G week. We should do a random themed week. Just pick a random animal, right? Like, forget Shark Week. We could just do something like, I don't know, like
Crab Week.
Crab Week. Finish the month off with an episode on Crab Rave or whatever the hell that game was.
Crab Week.
What was that Souls game that had crabs that came out recently?
Another Man's Treasure, I think it's called, or something.
Is that what it is?
Crab's Treasure, or something like that.
I heard it was okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard it was legitimately decent. You know what else sounds really good? Black Myth Wukong.
So I know we're live and we haven't started yet, but Shroud Dextero did a quoted Shroud saying that if Black Myth Wukong doesn't get Game of the Year, then the awards are rigged. That's such a stupid statement. It's like saying if Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't get Game of the Year, then it's rigged. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a bad game. It's a good game, and Wukong looks like a great game. I don't think it's Game of the Year good unless you're really into that genre. I think that's a crazy statement. So, like, we had Balatro this year. We had freaking all kinds of great shit this year. I mean, Helldivers 2 is going to be high on my list if it wasn't for all the train wreck of patching they've done. Right?
Erdtree, baby. I mean, that's
Erdtree. Yeah, I mean, I think you can still make the argument that game is still. If it was a standalone spin-off game, Shadow of the Erdtree would definitely be up that list.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's the least DLC of the year, if anything.
For sure, yeah.
But like, that's not a thing. It should be.
And like, I'm sure Wukong is great. It looks the graphics look amazing. The music sounds pretty decent when it's there, but I don't know. Crazy.
I watched the first 5 minutes and the fight, like the tutorial fight, and you're fighting on a cloud, like in the clouds, and it is I'm serious.
I know.
It is the coolest looking thing because it literally all your motion, the clouds follow your motion like perfectly. I was like, this is beautiful, man. Fuck, I shouldn't have watched this.
Is it an Unreal 5 game? I think it's an Unreal 5 game.
So. I think it is.
Because the next couple of years, we're going to get lots of this shit. Like, it's just really stellar graphics on like a high... Like, Unreal 5 is legit.
I know my PC was down for the last couple of weeks because, I had to take the time off. But I updated my card, my drivers, yesterday before I streamed. And then I just got on today, and it's like, Wukong's release, you need a new driver update. I was like, stop it! Stop telling me to get this thing.
There's so many games you have to play. You got Liza P. You've got, I don't know, Alan Wake 2 we got to get through.
SimStar's going to beat me up if I don't finish Liza P.
I saw the teaser ending to that game. They could have a whole franchise of Liza P. You never know. Should get in that door now.
That's what I heard. I've heard it's a great game, and it's fun to play. I just need to be in the mindset to do it.
Yeah.
I'm on my Alan Wake kick, which, speaking of.
Yep. All right, drop that opening line then.
Jake, you should Alan Wake me up before you go. Alan Wake Revisited. Today on Master.
Who's keeping track? Really?
Don't quote dates over the intro.
Don't fact check over the intro. Welcome everybody to another episode of Press Me to Cancel, your favorite podcast. At least that's what's written in the manuscript of Alan Wake. He's just typing it as we go. Greatest podcast ever. Actually, that's what we should have done. I should have gotten one of us to record exposition to play over the podcast. That's what I should have spent the last 3 hours doing, not making a goddamn thumbnail. I tell you.
You think Alan Wake typed this podcast into existence?
Somebody had to. All that deep research we did. I didn't even know this game came out 3 years ago. Or at least the remastered version. Yeah, all right.
That's why you got me. I got some facts.
There you go. All right. Well, welcome to Press B. I am your host this week, Sick Jake, and not alone. I'm joined in what we're going to call Sweeps Month here at Press B, as we're down to 2 people every week, as everybody's been taking vacation or been sick. But Chard's here with me. It's Crab Week. Happy Crab Week, everybody. That's not going to tie into this episode at all. Chard, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been trying to get through my second playthrough of Alan Wake before we got to this episode, but unfortunately we had to hasten the project faster than that. But I have been poking around with some really great lore videos on YouTube, and it's resurfacing some of my memory of the game. It's a fantastic game. So I'm very excited to talk about this one. It's the only Souls game, that non-Souls game, that I've been pumped to talk about the last couple of days.
You're not excited to talk about Marvel Snap? It got a new update, Chard. I tell you, that game is going places. It's going places. So we're going to talk about Alan Wake, probably more leaning toward the remastered side of it, because that's the version I played, and that's you're playing as well recently. But you did play the original as well. So I know that we've been talking, you and I, about the Remedy games quite a bit recently, and how I know you want to go through the entire Remedy extended universe, which is a big undertaking for sure.
It's 4 games. I mean, it's not like it's 20 games, it's just 4 of them, but they're all great games, so I'm excited to play them all.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, for me, I've known Remedy games from Max Payne years and years and years ago. Max Payne was one of my earliest PC games that I stands out to me, and I really love that game. But I kind of fell off the radar of that studio. I didn't really pay attention to any of the other games. And then last year, Alan Wake 2 came out and got rave reviews across the board. Like, it was sweeping awards at the end of the year. And I wanted to play it quite badly, but I always tell myself, don't play the sequel unless you played the first one, to get an idea of what the story and whatnot is. So I kind of held off. And at some point, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buckle down. I'm gonna beat Elden Ring this year. I'm gonna get Diamond Rank in Street Fighter 6, and I'm gonna beat, goddammit, Alan Wake, the first one, and then I can play Alan Wake 2. Right. So I bought both of them back to back because it was on sale on the Epic Game Store for like $5 or something ridiculous. So I went back and played it, and it's not a particularly long game. Alan Wake originally came out in 2010, and it's 6 chapters. And then it recently got a remastered version, which I just found out was 2021. So, and there are some differences I will talk about in a little bit. So I played this recently. I just finished it last month, and I love this story. But Chard, you got to chapter 5 recently, but how long ago did you beat the full game? And was it remastered or was it the original version?
It was the original version. I actually have it on Xbox back here somewhere. Many moons ago, I used to do playtesting for Microsoft on the weekends for like some extra scratch, and they would give you a little bit of money and then your choice of like a handful of games. Ironically, I got Alan Wake and Quantum Break from doing game
did you?
Over. I had no idea that they were connected. I mean, I know they're Microsoft, they're Microsoft games, but I didn't realize that Remedy did both of them. It was completely didn't even think about Remedy, and when I think of Max Payne, I always thought Rockstar, because it was one of the Rockstar games, I believe, that came out many years ago.
Yeah, I guess they own the IP, and I think Max Payne 3 was done by Rockstar exclusively. But yeah, that first Max Payne I recognize only because one of the heads of Remedy, Sam Lake, is his character model, his face was used in Max Payne. And I remember the low polygons, but the super high res textures, and his face looked like he was smelling a fart the entire game. And and I'm playing I'm playing Alan Wake 2, not to get into that too much, but he's in it as a live action sequences, and it's just weird seeing his face. Like he does the smile. He's very Swedish or Finnish. He's
Yeah.
got a thick
Oh,
accent.
man. I didn't realize that the guy from Alan Wake 2, we won't say who, you'll find out pretty quick, it's no spoiler, but now that I see Max Payne's polygoned face, it is him. I didn't realize
Oh
that.
yeah,
Okay. That's
and
funny.
but the voice actor was always different for that guy, right? So it's just
Yeah.
weird hearing his actual voice with that face.
It's the
It's
same thing as
hilarious.
Alan Wake's model character is also voice acted by
Yeah,
somebody else as well, because his character is also like super Finnish too. I think the guys are the same vein. He's a Finnish actor of some kind, but he's voiced by somebody else. So when he talks, you're like,
yeah.
no, you don't sound like Alan Wake at all. You sound completely
It's
different.
it's so wild, so wild. But so I guess to dive in the story a little bit about Alan Wake and what it is, and I guess what draws both of us to this game. Came in 2010. You play Alan Wake. You're I guess a famous author. I want to say like Tom Clancy level of author, I guess in this fictional universe. You're a fairly famous novelist. You're well known, but you got a case of writer's block. So your wife kind of talks you into a vacation, and I believe it's called Cauldron Lake and a village of a town
Brighton,
of Bright Falls.
Brighton, Brighton Falls. Yep, which is
Bright
it
Falls, yeah.
is based in Washington, which is not
Yes.
it actually the town doesn't exist in real life, but the town that it is modeled after is called North Bend, which is also the same town that Twin Peaks, the
Oh,
show, was
really?
filmed and modeled after as well. So
Oh,
there's,
damn.
I mean, Snoqualmie Falls is in the beginning of the Twin Peaks thing. You don't see that, but
Right.
when you're walking through Brighton, the town, especially in two, it is very reminiscent of North Bend and the R&R diner that's in Twin Peaks. If you watch Twin Peaks and then Jake, you go back to the diner and walk around in there, it's
Right.
almost identical. It's
Oh, really?
crazy. Yeah, it's
That's funny.
absolutely insane.
I wonder if they actually did like on location scouting of places to get research, or if they just based it off of like Twin Peaks. It's interesting. Okay, we'll get there. So you're a writer. You have a case of writer's block. You're kind of talked into taking vacation in Cauldron Lake, and your wife character in the game is actually trying to get you to go to like a not an insane asylum, but like a therapy retreat of some kind. And he
Mhm.
gets upset and storms out of the cottage, and then oh no, suddenly your wife falls into the lake and disappears. And then oh no, you're in a car accident and you basically go over the edge of a cliff, and when you awaken you're in this terrible dark uh, nightmare of a scenario, I guess. And this is very much a survival horror thriller type game. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna take a stab in the dark. You might be a fan of these games, huh, Chard?
Just a bit, just a bit.
Yeah,
Jake and I were talking earlier today on Marco Polo, and we were trying to figure out if there was something that was reminiscent of this style of game, because when you play Resident Evil, it
yeah,
doesn't, I mean, it's not tank control. It's very straightforward, regular controlling kind of stuff. But we were trying to think of any kind of game that we could correlate it to, if this is something on its own, or if there's something that mimics it. And I told him that it felt very Silent Hill esque in the
okay,
psychological term of the game. You're in a lot of dark places. This game's focus on the darkness is a very important
yeah,
aspect of the game. As a matter of fact, like your wife is afraid of the dark. She has a phobia of the dark, and the lights turn out, and then you try and go and save her. And there's a bunch of stuff that goes along with the whole darkness aspect of the game. But the way that Silent Hill plays in very dark corridors with flashlights and stuff like that feels a lot more Alan Wake in this regard. So I feel like Alan Wake may have borrowed a little bit of Silent Hill's kind of characteristics or framework to
yeah,
make Alan Wake what it is. Um,
yeah. I was
but
trying to
it's
figure
very
out.
much a mind. I feel like it's because where Resident Evil feels more jump scary action, this is more of kind of a, sorry YouTube, but like a mind fuck kind of game a little bit. Like
Yes,
it's very jumpy and it's very dark and very like messes with your head as you're playing it kind of
yeah. Like
game.
for me personally, I really don't play horror games very often. I did like Resident Evil, and when I say I like Resident Evil, I'm talking about the PlayStation ones, right? 1, 2, and 3.
Mhm.
And that's where it felt like that. But you're absolutely right. It's more psychological thriller than it is horror. Although it definitely has jump scares. There's definitely parts where
Oh yeah.
I was joking offline. I beat Elden Ring and then I beat Alan Wake together pretty much back to back, and my heart rate has never been higher. I could have had a heart attack. I almost died for this podcast, people. Like it's pretty brutal because there are definitely parts where like you're absolutely right. There's definitely daytime segments where you're exploring, you're getting a bit of story, you're talking to characters, but the majority of the game at nighttime you're fending for your life, right? You're trying to speed through zones from spotlight to spotlight for safety because in this game light is a major mechanic like you mentioned.
Mhm.
In the point where a spotlight like a lamp, an overhead lamp is not only a save point, a checkpoint, but it's also if you're being chased by enemies by entering a spotlight, they disappear, right? It's like a
Mhm.
safe zone. And
Right.
either to kind of go with that as well is you're armed most of the time, not always, most of the time with a flashlight. And in this game, the flashlight is kind of like a weapon in that it's neat in that in combat, and there's a lot of combat. There's shadowy figures called, I believe they're called, is it called the Taken? I think they're called.
The take. Yes.
Yeah. So, and when they come at you, they're wearing like a shadowy cloak of shadow and armor, and you can shoot them with a weapon, and I think you can kill them, but it takes so many hits. What you're supposed to
Mhm.
do is flash your flashlight on them and actually like intensify it and burn away their shadow armor, and then you can see their face, and then you can cap them, and that's usually how you get through most encounters. So everything about this game is about the control and management of light, and that's pretty unique. So
Mhm.
then that's what I was trying to figure out. Is there any game that you can recall that uses that kind of mechanic that might be influenced by Alan Wake? I couldn't really think of anything.
I'm sure someone will call us out on our Discord or on our webpage or something, but I honestly have never used a light mechanic in that sense. I'd more of the light mechanic to like find your way around or to solve a puzzle or something like that, but never as a combat weapon, never using
Yeah,
flares and a flare like the flare gun is the bazooka of Alan Wake, right?
yeah,
Like you fire one of those off and it'll take everything out in its radius. Um, I don't know many that really focus on using that as a trope, and I think it's really cool. It's a really cool aspect of the game.
yeah. And like in terms of like the combat itself, it's not like Resident Evil where you get maybe one or two enemies on the screen. There are many sequences where you have half a dozen enemies coming at you, right? Like
Mhm.
it's pretty in your face combat. There's also sequences where not just the Taken are coming after you, but the mysterious dark presence that haunts you through this story is lifting objects and throwing them at you. And when I say objects, I'm talking like section of bridges, uh,
Tractor
trees,
trailers,
rocks, tractor trailers,
farming
bulldozers.
equipment. It looks
Yeah,
like Twister.
yeah, it's pretty brutal. Like it's just anything and everything around you can be a weapon from the dark presence. And those sequences, if you're not dodging and finding safety, you're using your flashlight to kind of burn those objects away, and it's pretty unique.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of what drew me to this game and franchise is that it's very very unique, or at least I feel it is. So I may not be a horror fan, but I really dug the mechanics of that combat, at least initially. So
It does get a little it can get a little tedious further into the game, admittedly. There is kind of a dodge mechanic that you can use in the game, but it's also your
yeah,
run mechanic. You have to kind of time it just right, and sometimes it skips, and you feel like I pressed it when the guy was swinging, but it's A, it's super dark all the time. B,
yeah,
that you are literally surrounded by people, and half the time you think the guys are just in front of you, and then you take an axe to the back because something snuck up behind you you didn't see. Like it is crazy. Like the focus on the combat in this can get like really out of hand. You got birds flying at you in some respects and shit flying at you, like the tractor trailers, and then there's a character. This game is exceptionally story heavy
yeah,
throughout it, but it's not like a make your own, like choose your own adventure kind of story. There's a lot of action and a lot of combat in it, but there's a lot of sections of meeting people and talking to the people of the town, and then later you'll see those people again, but they've been taken by the Taken. So now you're fighting like the guy that was getting you the hotel keys to get into your cottage in Cauldron Lake. You end up fighting him, and he's got some weird voiceovers that has cool voice modulation and stuff. It
yeah,
sounds all wicked. Um, it's very unique, and it doesn't. You go into basically like arenas in certain respects of fighting things, but it doesn't feel like it. Like there's an area, like an area that you should stay in when you're fighting a boss sometimes, but it still feels
Right.
open enough that you could run. You feel like you're running for miles within this arena to find something. Um, so I think that the stage layouts are really cool too. It's super linear, but the areas still feel really open.
Yeah, there's definitely sequences where I kind of wish they explained it a bit better, but there are certain sequences where it's to your benefit to just kind of keep running, right? To not fight everything you come across, because there are sequences where enemies respawn infinitely. And I found
Yeah.
that part kind of annoying, where in a game like this, which is common, you're very limited in the amount of ammo that you have and the weapons you have. To the point where actually every time you beat a chapter of the 6 chapters, they take away all your items, and that was really frustrating. So all the cool
Yeah.
weapons you got at the end of the chapter, you start fresh the next chapter, like a new episode of a
Your
TV
20
show.
flashlight batteries that you
Yeah.
literally you've been holding on to.
And like if you don't have the flashlight batteries, if you can't use your flashlight, you basically can't win the stage. So it didn't get to the point where I had to like reload a stage or anything, but it definitely felt there were sequences where it's just better for me to plow through and run and not use any of my resources, not use my batteries, not save my bullets, and then kind of save that for a boss encounter. And I'm
Mhm.
not gonna lie, it was fun for the first couple of chapters, but by chapter 5, I think it was end of chapter 4 and then 5, I kind of got tired of the combat. I just wanted the story beats because the story was so strong in this. So I
Yeah.
mean, you're on chapter 5 now. Do you still enjoy the combat? Did you enjoy it
Oh, yeah.
last time? Yeah.
I
Okay.
like this whole game from start to finish. I think but I like those games. Like the difference between you and I, Jake, is that I
Right.
love like Silent Hill. I like these kinds of action creepy games because the combat isn't as relentless to me, and it just fits with the story. And I don't feel
Right.
like I'm getting pushed by wave and wave. But there are things that you could do where I never like I've died a couple times in my recent playthrough as of last night. I died like 3 or 4 times, but it never felt like this is all I've got. Like I can't do anything else. This is what I've got. I have to figure this out. There are things that you could do to make it easier for yourself. If you're like, oh, if I focus on this instead of that, then that'll make that go away. And it makes it a little bit better than just
Okay.
like I just gotta bull rush my way through this and figure it out. Um, I yeah, I it doesn't bother me. I'm a big fan of the combat. I've only played a little bit of Alan Wake 2. We're not going to talk about a lot of Alan Wake 2. We're just going to use it as a reference today.
Yeah.
Um, but I like the combat in that a little bit too. It's slightly different. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's for another episode.
Well, I mean, I'll just say that when I played Alan Wake 2, because I'm a little bit further into it, I was glad that the combat is similar in the theme of Alan Wake 1. But I mean, it's been, what, 15 years since this came out? So they've definitely refined how they handle combat. I was expecting combat was like Control, which is another Remedy game, but no, they've definitely done the Alan Wake combat. But I've only seen like one, maybe two enemies on screen at once. So it's a bit more focused on the survival horror thing. It felt more like Resident Evil to me, but yeah, that's a sequel. In this game, it's fast and furious, lots of enemies on the screen. I felt you're dodging all the damn time. I'm with you when you think you're safe, and all of a sudden an axe flies past your ear, and you're like, "What the hell?" And
You get
you
that
just
really
keep running.
quick. You get the quick
Yeah,
violin sound and it pans out, and then you can see like it does like a camera rotation about the
yeah,
things that are around you, and you're like, "Oh, shit, run. We just gotta run,"
yeah,
and because it'll do that. Like you said, there are points in the game where they just keep going. And there's hidden stuff in this game. You can miss
for sure.
manuscripts, you can miss there's these coffee thermoses that you find throughout the game, which I can't remember what you get if you get them all, but if not some kind of
Yeah,
collectible dealy deal. But um
Ye-
trying to 100% this is very difficult on stream because it gets boring when
yeah.
you're looking for the same thing over and over. But
Yeah, and there's sections where I just kind of plow through, and I would grab the thermoses if I found them. I would grab the manuscript pages as I found them, but I didn't go out of my way to 100% this game. I'm not that kind of gamer, and I don't think you need it. I still got lots from the story without all that collectible stuff.
yeah.
I'm like you. I
Mhm.
don't even know what you get for it, to be honest. But it was
Right.
fine. Yeah, definitely exploring levels is key. There are certain stages they're actually quite large, and that there's vehicles in the game. I'm not gonna say the car physics are amazing or anything, but the fact that you can hop in a truck and you can use the truck as a weapon to fight the Taken,
Yeah.
or you can
Yeah,
flash your
you could
lights.
even yeah, you could focus your lights like your flashlight and use
Yeah,
that to break down their shields. It's pretty cool.
And like there's sequences where you drive along quite a long road, and there's places to stop, and you can just ignore all of it and keep going, which I did toward the end of the game. But early on, I was stopping and checking every cabin on the way because there is definitely new weapons, right? There's shotguns, hunting rifles, different handguns. There's the flares, which, like you said, are a godsend when you're fighting in groups of enemies, which you do. There's, I think it's flashbangs, grenades,
Flashbangs, yep.
which do exactly what they say they do. It's a massive thing of light which wipes a room of enemies, which is really useful. So it pays to explore in this game, which is neat. So yeah, like I'm with you. It's not an open world game. It's definitely a single note, like
Very linear. Yeah.
linear game. Thank you. But I know when I was looking up on research on this game, Remedy originally wanted this to be an open world survival game. That's the original
Right.
intention. But I guess they had trouble wrapping how they would do that and tell a good story, because they're all about story at Remedy, right? Like they have a very distinct, cheesy narration type of thing they did in Max Payne, and they do that here as well. And you either love it or hate it. But I guess they couldn't bend that to an open world survival, so they made it more episodic. They definitely took cues from TV shows like Twilight Zones, right? Or my favorite is Outer Limits. I love Outer Limits, and they wear that on their sleeve to the point where, as you're exploring the game and stages, there's black and white TVs around the place, and they show like a fake Twilight Zone inspired story called was it Night Springs?
Night Springs, yes.
And there's like little videos, right? Like sure, and they're not short. They're like 5 minutes sometimes, and you can sit and watch them, and they're cheesy as fuck, just like the original.
But they're terrible. A lot of them are really bad.
but they're great though. I still
they're great.
them.
But it's the whole Twilight Zone thing. What I really like about this game, and I'm gonna try not to go too far off the reservation on this here, but they like this game is happening in two different levels of what's going on. Like
Yeah.
some of it's like in Alan Wake's head, some of it's real, and while you're walking through, you'll see Alan Wake on a TV, like looking at a TV, talking to himself about how he has to write this story and he has to do this. And this is where these characters, there's a lot. It's not Game of Thrones level characters, but there's a lot of names and people. There's Rose, there's a lamp lady who is I think a callback to the log lady from Twin Peaks, for those of you who know who that is.
Right.
The crazy log lady. There's Thomas Zane, there's a bunch of different people that are super important in this that you can easily miss and be like, they keep talking about that the Asgardian rock band that they have on there, which the gods of Asgard are freaking amazing.
Yes,
they are so cool. Their characters are really cool too. And they have a whole thing. I think gods of Asgard are seen throughout the Remedy connected universe. As far as I know, they're in Control, they're in Quantum Break, I believe, and they're very heavy in Alan Wake 2, obviously, but those two characters are really neat as well. But there's the story is there's not just a linear like what's going on and someone telling that. It's like an onion, it's like a cake. There's so many layers to this game that it's very convoluted to start, but it really pulls itself together towards the end, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is really well written." Like this was extremely. Once it all pulls itself together, it's really cool.
Like I love Barry the agent, right? He's Alan Wake's agent, right? And there's sequences with him that are hilarious. There's one line where he's like, "Just like that Night Springs writing gig I got you. Don't you remember that, Alan? You're great. You're great in that." And Alan's just groaning because he hated writing for a TV show. It was very hacky, right? Or the fact that he's carrying a cardboard cutout of Alan Wake because he's a famous author, does book signings, and Barry's like, "Don't worry, Alan, I've got your cardboard cutout." It's like, "Thanks, Barry." There's these, basically the equivalent of zombies attacking us. Yeah. He's dragging through the forest. It's funny, but then it's also gets very serious. Like your character's trying to find out what happened to his wife. He's getting weird phone calls. He thinks she's been kidnapped, and as it goes further and further, it gets really deep. I won't spoil the entire plot, but the overreaching idea of this story is that there's a supernatural aspect to Bright Falls and Cauldron Lake, the cabin that you went to visit. And the idea is that Alan Wake, as an artist, is basically influencing the world around him. This dark presence is using Alan to basically create a world around him to try and escape. and that's the entire story focus. And we'll talk about the ending to the story maybe at the end of the episode because I do want to talk about that a little bit. But the idea is that Alan Wake, the reason this world feels so supernatural yet hokey and at the same time is because he, as a writer, is writing his own prison in a way,
Right.
and it's incredibly interesting. If you've played any other Remedy games, if you're like me, maybe you play Control first. I play Control first, and that was a off the walls X-Files inspired type of game, and I loved it. But it had some weird plot points and narrative stuff that was like, oh, that's incredibly interesting. Alan Wake has all
Mhm.
that, and that's why I was all in. So I may not have enjoyed the combat toward the end, but the story beats were really great and really compelling, and I couldn't wait to get through the story of this game so I could play the second game.
Yeah. And it sucks that I mean, I'm glad that they did the re-release so that we can play it with fresh eyes because the remaster
Right.
looks phenomenal. It looks
Yeah.
really good because I bought the first one on Steam and it's just the original version on Steam. And I was
Okay.
like, this did not age well, like very, very well at all. And then you were like, it's on Epic, it's like $2, $5, go pick it up. So I went and got it and it had the DLC and everything because I've not played the DLC. I want to. Um, and I was like, "Holy cow, this looks really good." So I'm
Yeah.
glad that I can replay it with it looking as well as it does with the DLC attached to it so that when I do play Alan Wake 2, it's fresh in my mind. The cheesiness in the game also really lends itself to each stage or episode. What I
Right.
really liked about this game is it plays like a TV show. My wife, when I played it initially, liked watching this because it plays like a TV episode, and then when it's done, it recaps the last
Yeah.
episode you did like a TV show. So
Yeah.
we turn it on and she'd be like, "Wait, don't play I want to see the recap because I don't remember what you did." So she'll watch the recap of the show and then we play into the next game and it just bleeds into one another. Excellent. Like and when you
Yeah.
beat a stage or an episode, it's like a supernatural episode or show on the WB where it says like end of episode or whatever and then you get some band playing a song in the
An
background. Some of the
awesome
tunes are really
soundtrack.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every of those one of those tracks is like used only once at the end of a
Yep.
chapter, and they're all bangers. They're all
Yep.
really well done. Yeah.
It's cool. It's exceptionally well designed. Remedy just I feel like Remedy just quietly has been hitting things out of the park and we didn't see it until Control. And
Yeah.
it's a little shitty because Quantum Break has a full star cast. Like it's at the time, A-list actors are playing in this game
Yeah.
and it all connects. It connects to Alan Wake, it connects to Control in some way, shape, or form. Some more than others, but that's where my interest was peaked because I love Alan Wake. I was so excited to get it when I got it from Microsoft, and then playing it was just incredibly fun. And then they were like, "Oh, Alan Wake 2's coming out," and I went,
Yeah.
"Finally!" About goddamn time to happen because this game deserved a sequel. It needed to have an ending
For
because
sure.
American Nightmare, which is a Alan Wake spinoff, didn't really do it much justice. It's good, but they wanted to do more. They just couldn't do as much as they wanted to.
Okay. So I won't dive into spoilers of Alan Wake just yet. I do want to talk about the ending a little bit later. But yeah,
Mhm.
so the remaster version, which I played, for those who thought about, well, was there differences from the original? Obviously, the graphics got a little bit of a bump. They look pretty. It's still
They
a
look great.
2010 game, right? The models are
Yeah.
still not as high res as you might think they would be for 2021. But who cares? The atmosphere is definitely key. Style is all over this game. It looks very, very well done, and the music is
Mhm.
just banger. Like everything about it is just very presented very, very well. Differences from the original that I was reading. Apparently, the original 2010 release had a lot of product placement, things
Mhm.
like Energizer batteries in the game,
Mhm.
certain codes you could scan with a Microsoft app tied to
Yeah,
Verizon
there are
with
QR codes all over
microsite.
the place. Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of weird stuff like that. In the remastered version, they took it all out, which I probably appreciate more because the product placement always irked me when it came to TV shows. I never liked it,
Right.
so I probably would have been annoyed with it. But then I think this also feels on brand for a game like this, where it's based on those 90s TV shows, like Twilight Zone or Outer Limits. It's based on those, and product placement is very much a thing in TV shows. So I see why
Right.
they did it, but it still feels kind of weird. But
I mean, it's
yeah,
also I mean, Microsoft had this. This was a Microsoft game. I mean, it's obviously
right.
made by Remedy and all that other shit. But I feel like maybe Microsoft might have had a little bit of hand in that with the product placement
Well,
stuff.
Well, because this would have been 360 era, I guess, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so because I love my 360, but Microsoft was definitely trying to push the idea of a new media with the Xbox
Hmm.
stuff back then, to the point where they had One versus 100, which was the game show, but on the Xbox Live, and a bunch of things. Even Quantum Break was trying to blur the lines between a TV show and a game with a lot of live action shots, and like you said, a lot
Yeah.
of good actors.
Yep.
So that was Microsoft in that time period. So I get it. Remastered though came out for PS5, I believe. Yeah, PS5, Xbox,
Hmm.
what the hell it is, and
The
PC. So
SX
it,
or whatever.
yeah, the all the modern consoles 3 years ago. So and it's definitely looks really great. And like I said, it was dirt cheap on Epic, like criminally so. But maybe it's
Yeah.
just people don't have. I mean, people know of this game. It reviewed well. It got like high 80s when it first came out, and the remaster was well liked. But I think I'm with you where Remedy is quietly making these banger games, and outside of Control, nobody knew. And then they released
Right.
Alan Wake 2 last year, and everybody's like, oh, right, Remedy's still a studio that's around, and they're still doing really awesome games, right? It's pretty
Well, I
wild.
I didn't know that Control and Alan Wake were even remotely connected
Yeah,
until the DLC, and I did some digging. And then you play Alan Wake 2 and you see remnants like right off the bat. You see remnants of Control in there. And I've
yeah,
not finished Control. I played enough of it to know, all the stuff that's going on. But the fact that they were merging those two together, I was like that. And I'm a concept album guy. I love concept albums. I love that shit.
right.
And I love it when companies bring in other things. And I don't mean like in Fortnite, we're putting the Avengers in. I mean, like, the story is tied to another character of that story from something that I played in 2010, now I'm playing something in 2018, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, this guy, Alan Wake, he's trapped out in this blah, blah, blah," and you're like, "Oh, shit, I played that.
Yeah,
That's, like, one of my favorite games." Oh my they're, like, connecting all that stuff together, and then, you dive deeper and you find out Quantum Break is involved, and then you dive deeper and you find out all these other things are involved. And then of course, Alan Wake 2 decides to drop a DLC that has the two main characters from Quantum
yeah.
Break and from Control mixed into it. And it's just ooh, just I love it. It
It's
makes me
awesome.
so excited.
The
Yeah.
best example I can give of this, what it feels like, is if Control is X Files, then Alan Wake's games are like Millennium. For those who remember that
I
Henriksen
love
show
Millennium.
back in the day,
That's a
I love it
great
too.
show.
Short
Good
lived. It
good
should have gotten
call.
more. But in
Yeah,
terms
that's a
of like
good show.
but the feel of it, right, was so much different than
Yeah.
X Files. X Files was the the supernatural event of the week, and that's what Control was.
Mhm,
Everything was a supernatural event, and they were all very isolated. But in this
mhm.
game, Alan Wake, it's a supernatural event, but it's the entire game stretched out, and
Right.
that's where they kind of blend over. So, can you play Control without Alan Wake? Absolutely, that's what I did.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm.
But if you've played Alan Wake, going back to Control, I kind of paints it in a new light for you when you realize that what Alan Wake is going through as a
Yeah.
supernatural event, there's a whole world of messed up supernatural events, and it's really interesting. Like when we're done with these games, we have to do a kind of like a catch-all episode on the Remedy
Yeah.
universe, because
Absolutely.
there's theories about like the dark presence in Alan Wake versus the bad guys, the Hiss, I think they're called, from
The hiss.
Control.
Yep. Yep.
Are they
Mhm.
different? Are they the same? They're definitely very similar in what they're doing, but they're different aspects of ways to control and mess with humanity. That's really fascinating.
Mhm.
There's a lot of lore in these games, and I wasn't expecting that when I started playing this
It's
game.
right? You don't
Yeah.
you don't pick up Alan Wake to get, to look at item descriptions to get information about what the world is going on around you. And you do, you get transcripts. I mean, Alan
Yeah.
Wake's story is literally unfolding in front of you because he's kind of already written it, and you're finding that out as you go, and it's just so well thought out. Like the entire experience is like the whole thing. You're like, Jesus, this is so well done. And
Yeah.
you look at a dude wearing a tweed jacket with elbow protectors, because you got to bring that up because they literally drop that and make fun of him about that all the time. And you don't think that it's going to be as deep as it goes. And then holy shit, this is a game that you can get into a YouTube rabbit hole for hours and never find
Yes.
the bottom of it. It is just so well done. I love the the fairy with the cutout. it's a good
Dude, it's,
that's a
it's
good
so
choice.
good. It's just like the bits of humor, but the game is definitely dark and definitely gritty. And I definitely
Mhm.
appreciate it. Like you're right. The guy's wearing a tweed jacket, but a fucking hoodie. Who does this? It's just
Get that. And he's running around the Pacific Northwest. I mean, he fits right
Yeah.
in up here.
It's
And
really
you're
well
looking for
done.
coffee mugs. I mean, good God, coffee thermoses. You're in Washington, baby. Welcome, welcome in.
Yeah, it's definitely a great thing. And for a game that has, and I say it in the best possible way, very hokey, cheesy narration, right? Straight out of like it feels like a detective story, something that you're watching like Stephen King. If Stephen King were to narrate over his own movies, that kind of thing. That's what it feels like, and it's cheesy, but it's still really compelling and really well done, and it's definitely worth listening to. And that's why, I guess, to tie into the DLC, I loved Alan Wake 1 and I loved the story in it, but by the end I got tired of the combat. But the DLCs, which there were two of them in the remastered edition, Signal and Rider, they're
Yep.
more combat heavy, right? And there is some story in there, but I didn't bother going through them because I got tired of the combat by that point. I just read the story plot summaries on the wiki, and I feel I'm fine with it.
Right.
If I'd liked the combat more, I might have maybe appreciated those DLC episodes more, but I couldn't get into it. So did you do those DLCs? And then
No, I
also
have not.
American,
I haven't
you
played
didn't
them
do
yet.
them?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Because then the other one, there's also this game did well enough that it got an Xbox Live Arcade spin-off, the Alan Wake American Nightmare. I didn't even know that
Mhm.
was a thing. I thought it was like a DLC, but it's a full-on standalone thing. But I heard it's also combat heavy. Like, is there
Very,
story there?
very. Yeah. So that they're gonna kind of breach into a little bit of spoiler territory here,
Yeah.
but not much. The purpose of American Nightmare was trying to elaborate on Mr. Scratch, which is Alan Wake's double that you
Right.
discover later in Alan Wake One, and it's his main focus. Now, they they like the combat. You would hate this. You would not like American Nightmare at all,
Right.
Jake. They give you like a nail gun, like they give you all kinds of different like weapons you can use,
Okay.
but it's so like the concept is you're trying to like Mr. Scratch is keeping you stuck in a Night Springs episode. So you're in Arizona now. Like you've left Washington, you're not in Washington anymore. You're now in Arizona, but you're stuck in a Night Springs episode. So you keep going through the same 3 episodes
Okay.
and he keeps stopping you and sending you back and you're as you're going you're it's so repetitive. The biggest downfall of American Nightmare is its repetition. It's
Okay.
literally the same 3 levels 3 times. So you go, you
Yeah.
do this fix, you talk to this character, you get a little bit more insight, but Alan remembers everything when he gets sent back. So he does something different each time to change the outcome to move forward, but he keeps getting kicked back. And then at the very end, you take on Mr. Scratch and you basically defeat him in some
Okay.
way, shape, or form. Um, but and then but it they wanted to do more with it, but I don't know if they ran out of time or finances or what. It was an abuse of let's just do this combat thing that we're such a fan of because it works
Yeah.
so well with the DLC maybe, and you would hate it.
Yeah.
You would play maybe 30 minutes of it and be like, nope, this is absolutely
Yeah.
not for me.
That's what I
So, and
figured.
I
Okay.
I even gritted my teeth through it. I was like, I got to finish this because I want to know how the story ends. But by the third time I was in the fucking drive-in, I was like, okay, okay, this better be the end because I'll look it up. If this isn't the end, I'm gonna look this shit up. I don't want to play this anymore. Um, but
It's weird because thinking of Control. Control also had DLC, and I know one of the DLC was kind of heavily a callback to Alan Wake. I never played that one. I played because I bounced off the first DLC, which was also combat heavy. So it is
yeah,
weird that Remedy has made these combat systems in their games, and they're functional, they're fine, but they're not something I want to build a game around. Right? For me, these games
I
were all about the
love
story.
controls combat. I love controls combat. I
Really?
like being able
Okay,
to use a telekinesis and all that stuff. But again, Jake, we're different people. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
it's the same kind of setup for Silent Hill and Alan Wake One and all that stuff. Even
Right.
you even were like, I like Alan Wake Two combat, but I don't love it. Like it's still not my. I would not choose it. Kind of
Well,
thing. But
so because I started playing Alan Wake 2, the first DLC, Night Springs, just came out, or at least the first part of it came out. And
mm,
I accidentally started it up when I was playing through Alan Wake 2, and I'm like, the story is so good, it's great. Oh, there's a TV. And then suddenly I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm a character in Night Springs. And I'm
right,
like, all right, I'll give this 5-10 minutes to see what it is. And I quickly realized it was almost felt like it was probably combat focused to the point you're entering a kitchen and it's an arsenal of weapons and you pick your weapons to fight with. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. Give me the story. Give me the narrator. Give me the asshole writer again. I don't want your combat. I'm sure it's fine. I am going to give that one a go because
Mhm,
I can live with the Alan Wake 2 combat more than this game. But
mhm,
again, it comes back to like Control's DLC and now Alan Wake's DLC. Combat is not why I played these games. Not that I'm
right.
opposed to combat. I like Resident Evil 1,
Yeah,
2,
yeah,
and
yeah.
3. That's fine. But
Right.
I mean, yeah, these games are from your story. But I'm glad you like the combat and Control though, because I bounced off that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm excited to dive in a little bit deeper because when I found out that AWE, which is the Alan Wake experiment or experience, is Control's DLC,
Yeah.
that was what started this whole rabbit hole for me. Was like, wait, they're connected somehow,
Yeah.
and goes from there.
Yeah, these games are great. Every Remedy game too, if anybody's played more than one, there's always one like standout amazing sequence. So I'm gonna get I think over this point, let's move into spoilers of Alan Wake 1 and just say
Yeah.
Alan Wake Remastered is fantastic to play. Came out a couple years
Mhm.
ago. It's dirt cheap, totally worth playing. If you like the combat,
Absolutely.
great. But even if you don't like the combat, music, presentation, story is stellar, and there's few games like it. So, any final words on Alan Wake before we spoil the hell out of it?
Go play it. The story is really deep
Yeah,
and really good,
yeah,
and you don't have to find everything. There's manuscripts that go after the game, but even if you don't find them all, the story still gets told. It's not like you
yeah,
miss anything. You just get a little bit more insight before the story gets its full blown
right.
discussion out. I would just play it and run through and enjoy the game as it is. I think it's a beautiful game. Again, like Jake said, it's got that 90s feel from Millennium, which is great. Very Twin Peaksy. If you like Twin Peaks and all that weird David Lynch shit, it's the same kind of vein. And he talks about Stephen King being one of his favorite writers in the beginning of the game. So you can definitely see some King influence into the game itself from their writing. So yeah, if you don't want to, if that's the last thing you hear us say tonight,
Yeah,
go buy Alan Wake for dirt cheap and just sit down. It's not a long game and it's
at
worth every
all.
single minute.
Yeah,
And it'll probably open up some doors for you to be like, hey, I should try Control if I haven't played that, or I
yeah,
should try Quantum Break if I haven't played that, and understand why Alan Wake 2 was getting so much love off the get go. Because I still feel a lot of people were like, why is Alan Wake 2 getting so much love when it's been gone for 15 years? But they
yeah,
talk about all that in Alan Wake 2, like what has happened in the last 14 years and all that stuff. So go check that out. But go ahead and
yeah.
turn yeah, we're going into the spoilers
Spoilers
because
now. So yeah, at
the
this
story
point
is
it's
so
spoilers because I had to talk about this story a little bit more. But also just want to point out every single Remedy game has a sequence that's just meme worthy. And in Alan Wake 1, like in Control, it was the ashtray maze for those who've played that. Like the
mhm,
combination of music plus sights and sounds, it's just wild. Alan Wake 2 is as not as epic as that, but there's a sequence where you're on a farm. The Gods Vadsguard, the two old guys you meet at the asylum level, who are hilarious.
yeah.
I'm with you, right? Like they're sitting there at the table playing Night Springs, the board game. So I
And they
was watching
actually
you play the
their
night.
names are Thor and Odin.
Odin,
They
yeah,
changed their well Thor and Odin, but it's supposed
yeah.
to be Thor. But yeah.
But they like basically tell you, "Oh, we have a farm. You should come visit or something." And you actually go to their farm, and like a heavy metal band should, they have like this the Asgardian styled set piece that's on there, and you're on the stage and you're fighting on the stage while Barry's like trying to fix the lights to help fend off the attack. That whole sequence was really epic, and as much as I have gripes with the combat, that set piece was done really freaking well, and that will always stand out in my brain as like such a great combat sequence. I love that set
Mhm.
piece, and like I've heard Alan Wake 2 has very similar. Control had it, so Remedy's very good with what they do. They have a formula, right? Like much like BioWare has a certain formula with how they do their games, Remedy has a
Mhm.
certain style and they definitely hit it in each of their games. So really awesome. How much do you remember the ending of this game though, Chard?
I remember quite a bit. I'm trying to remember the lady in black's name, and I know her correlation and her relation.
Yeah.
Thomas Zane is a very important character throughout it, and he's connected to the ending. Um, I'm recalling the clicker, the light clicker that he was given. and a bunch of like tidbits from that. Again, I actually recently listened to a lore video not too long at work today while I was working on stuff just so I can get a refresher because I wanted to come in with a fresh mind on this discussion. But
Yeah.
the characters and the names that are all correlated are pretty important. And the fact that like they're setting him up to pretend that they kidnapped his wife, Hartman, I think the doctor that puts him in the
Yeah.
insane asylum, which they go very Shutter Island on that whole. If you guys have seen Shutter Island, um, with Alan Wake inside the insane asylum, and he meets the old gods of Asgard, um, and then I love the Thomas Zane connection. I love his character. I love how he's in a deep sea diving suit every time you see him
Yeah,
because
I
that's
know.
his favorite pastime was to go deep sea diving. So people are playing this game and there's some dude in a deep sea fucking 70s diving suit and you're like, who the fuck is this guy?
So
He's
maybe
only
you can
one of the
explain a
most
bit more to
important
this.
people.
Because I just beat the game, but honestly, my short-term memory sucks. So I was trying to like wrap my brain around the plot of this game. So Cauldron Lake, there's definitely it's a site of like a dimensional door to a different plane, right? That's where this
Place of
evil dark
power, right?
presence come
Is
from.
that what
Place
they
of power,
call
I
it in
guess.
Control? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
accurate, right? It's definitely
Mhm.
definitely a spot, a focal point of one dimension crossing over into the real world, and then you have basically the dark presence can't affect the our world directly. She has to interface. She has to work with somebody to kind of
An
do her
artist.
bidding, and so she preys on artists, right? There's been stories before in fiction of like the evil presence using a muse or an artist to kind of do their evil work, and that's what they're drawing from here. And I
Mhm.
guess that's what they're using Alan Wake for as a writer. He writes and affects the world. And before him, though, she had taken over Thomas Zane. I
Mhm.
think he was also a writer, or was he a
Thomas
painter?
Zane, he was no, he was a writer. He was but
Okay,
he was more of a poet. He was more of a short story poet writer.
right.
Um, so he so she took over the darkness took over his muse, his
His
I don't know
wife.
if it was girlfriend or wife, his
Okay,
love interest. She was taken over by them, and while she was trapped inside her, she was tricking him into writing her into existence. But he found out about it and he actually tried to rip the darkness out of his wife by ripping her heart out. So there's
right,
a scene where you see the darkness in Zane's wife's caricature with smoke coming out of her chest because he tried to pull the darkness out.
right,
So what Zane did, he learned this and he wrote the darkness back to sleep essentially, and also in doing so he completely erased all memory of him and his writing forever throughout the world by doing this.
right,
So the old gods of Asgard were a 1975 band, and they were stirring the darkness but never fully woke it up, and they knew that too, so they were trying to like keep it at bay. And Alan
right,
Wake got tricked and was the one that finished opening the door. So they kind of made woke it up, and then he let it out. And because she trapped his wife or captured his wife and then tricked him when she fell into the lake, there's a whole scene that you wake up from the car wreck, but then you get drunk on the moonshine that the old gods of Asgard gave you.
yeah,
And during your drinking phase, because they distill the water or they use distilled water from Cauldron Lake, which is the place of power, which allows Alan to dream walk in his dream to see what actually happened at the house. And he finds out that the darkness kidnapped his wife, but then tricked him that she was upstairs and led him back up into the writing room that his wife set up for him to write the book and
yeah,
trapped him in there and said, the only way to save your wife is to write this story. So he writes a Stephen King esque horror story, which he then lives out as you
right.
are playing the game.
And like as he writes that story more and more, the dark presence is kind of basically manifested in the real world and can escape, right? So at the
Mhm.
end of the game, he eventually Alan Wake realizes what he's doing. He get the pieces come together. He's not the first writer to be used by the presence, and he
Mhm.
finds a way to basically save his wife and save Barry and his friends by kind of continuing to write the novel, but not having them written in it, but writing that. I think he ends it off by writing Cauldron Lake sinks to the bottom of the lake, I think is what it was, the idea.
Mhm.
So he knows what he's doing. He's writing the novel that Cauldron Lake just goes beneath the water. Everybody's saved, but Alan Wake is down there and has to stay down there to continue writing. But what kind of was
That's right.
weird is the ending line to the game is something like, "It's not a lake, it's an ocean." And it's like,
Hmm.
end credits, great
Yep.
song. That would have pissed me off in 2010 if I played this game, though, because you don't get the answer. You don't get any follow up to that, really. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
in the DLC to a degree, but I don't feel like you do until Alan Wake 2, which is, over a decade later. So that ending sequence is so weird. I, I
Hmm.
I don't think I needed it to end on a happy ending, but it's just such a cliffhanger, and that just
Well, I
feels so
mean,
odd to me.
Alan Wake there was a transcript book that was written for Alan Wake 2 that had some lore that was connected to it, as well as some graphic novels, I believe, were also written for Alan Wake. You know,
Yes.
2010, they were doing Microsoft and Remedy was doing everything they could to promote this game. It was quietly huge. Like it had a lot
Yeah.
of connecting lines and for good reason too. So, if you bought like the special edition, you got like a transcript book that you can read that came with the game and it would explain a lot more of that other stuff. But they were setting it up for there had to have been a sequel in mind for this whole thing other than him just being like, I have saved all my friends and I'm trapped down here for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
but who knew what they were gonna do, but I mean, like you said, it got great reviews, so it just amazes me that it took them 15 years to get the next set of this game set up.
Yeah, from what I read, it was they had ideas for a sequel, but I guess they couldn't get it. Maybe they couldn't get funding, right? I'm trying to remember who owned them at the time. Maybe it was a partnership with Microsoft that kind of curtailed what they could do. I know,
Mhm,
for example, Max Payne, they don't own the IP to. That's Rockstar now, right? So maybe
right,
they were kind of at the whim of their publisher deals. But the
mhm,
ideas they had for an Alan Wake 2 at the time, they couldn't use, and they ended up evolving it into Quantum Break. And
right,
then, like I said, it's a studio that, I mean, they make great games, but I never heard of any of them post Max Payne, to be honest, until I played
right,
Control. And Control was a stellar release. That one's also really well reviewed, and I know it made Remedy a ton of money, and that probably gave enough clout to do what the hell they want. And I think
right.
that's why we eventually got Alan Wake 2. And Alan Wake 2, just for the 6 hours I played of it, it feels like
Spectacular.
it's the game that they want to make, and it's
It's so good.
totally their own,
Yep,
right? And nobody's telling them how to do a game, right? It's like
yep,
Larian Studios with Baldur's Gate 3. They made their own game. Nobody told them what to do, right? Like for
right,
some miracle, Wizards like, you know what, just make us a good game, and they did it on their own. They did it their way. So
right.
that's something special. I'm glad I played the remaster 3 years ago or now, and not like 3 years ago or worse, 10 years ago. Um,
Mhm.
because like there's stuff in this game
I
that definitely crosses over to Alan Wake 2.
I loved the game 10 years ago. I loved playing
Yeah.
in
Okay.
2010 when I first picked it up. I just fell in love, but again, it was in the realm of the stuff that I like to play. So,
Right.
and the funny thing was I was like, this game has quietly so much hype behind it.
Yeah.
Is it am I just hyping myself up, or because you look at the cover and you're kind of like, yeah, it looks like a Gail Grissom fucking
One of
novel or something.
those.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
yeah, okay, it just looks like an Xbox game, but then you play it and you're like, this is so deep. It's so good. There's characters that you love and you care about that aren't just Alan Wake. Like you give a shit about Barry, you give a shit about the guard, you give a shit about Rose. Like you
Yeah.
give a shit about people. You're like, God, I hope they don't get and then the people that get possessed, you're like, oh man, I like that guy. I didn't want to deal with that. Or there's an
Right.
asshole where you're like, oh good, I get to shoot that guy. Fuck that guy. There's
Yeah.
there's just so much to it. It is extremely well done, and the remaster has, I think, done really good justice to it. Um,
It's one of those games where I do feel bad now because I've played the first Silent Hill, and it was fine. I mean, it was good, but I mean I had zero interest in the rest of that franchise. And I've heard, I think you've said good things about it. Wolf has said a lot of good things about Silent Hill 2. I hear that there's a
2 is
remake
great.
of Silent Hill 2 coming out, and I'm hearing a lot of positive stuff
October
about it now.
7th.
Is it that
Let's
early?
go.
Yeah. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those games where I look at the cover, and I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, especially not a game, but I look at Alan Wake's box art, and it's just like, okay, it's a horror game. I'm good. I don't need to play it.
Right.
I
It is
wish
a
I didn't
it's
think
a
that way.
it's a
Yeah.
black cover
Yeah.
with the name Alan Wake across it and him standing, like, between the A's or something with his
Yeah.
flashlight, and that's
S-
it. It's
Yeah.
so, like,
It,
plain Jane, but it looks like a mystery book cover, like you would buy
yeah.
that book written by Stephen King or somebody.
Yeah.
So it definitely like it plays into all of its tropes of writers and 90s TV shows and all of
Yeah.
that stuff. All of those tropes are in there. Really
Yeah.
well depicted.
Yeah, really fantastic package all around. So, I mean, just to wrap it up, I guess, just stellar game. I'm really glad I played it now in 2024. It's fantastic. I can't wait to play more of the sequel. It's enough. It's enough where I'm after I beat Alan Wake 2, I might go back and play Quantum Break, which is a game I had zero interest in. Like I had no
Mhm.
interest in it at all, right? I almost want to play Control again, although I'm not going to because that game is long. I beat it once, but it makes me appreciate the studio so much. I'm not going to call it a hidden gem because I feel like everybody's played it but me. But there's more to this game than I thought, and I wish I gave it a shot back then because the atmosphere, the story, the narration is great. The bits of
Mhm.
humor are very on brand for that studio, and I really appreciate what they're doing with it. I love the stupid smug face of Sam Lake and Max Payne in the narration of this game. It just what a franchise! Like it's just something a wild ride. I'm glad I'm playing it now with Alan Wake 2. So I think this is
Yep.
great.
Sam Lake is depicted as Alex Casey, which is
Right,
Alan Wake's character that he wrote about, who is a cop, who is a beat cop, detective, and he actually kills him off in his most recent book. And the coming of him coming around to being like, well, I killed off this character who I've had hundreds of books, well, not hundreds, but lots of books about, a full story about. I've killed the character off. Now what do I do with my writing career? And that's where he gets the writer's block from, is because he's not writing about Alex Casey anymore. Then he
yeah,
finds out he's written Departure, which is the name of the story of the game, and but he didn't know he wrote it because he wrote it under the influence of the darkness. There's this whole thing, and I want to ask you, Jake, now that you've beaten the game, and it's a brain turner.
for
Do
sure.
you
Yeah,
think do you think that Thomas Zane may have actually written Alex Wake into existence to fight the darkness, because he wrote the clicker into existence
right,
that saved Alan Wake had as a kid. So Alan wasn't alive when Thomas Zane wrote this shit. Alan Wake doesn't know his father. He's not aware of
right.
who his father is. So there's this deep rumbling of, did Thomas Zane actually create Alan Wake out of his own writing for the Feeding the Darkness?
What a mind fuck.
Isn't that
Right.
great? I mean,
Well,
that stuff, you're really digging deep on a man wearing a tweed jacket. Like, it's just really well done.
well, because
You
like
just don't think
this
that it's that deep.
the sequel is features. I mean, it's in the first 5 seconds of the game. Alex Casey is one of the main characters in that game. So,
Mhm,
and I knew him. I recognized the name of him as the book from the first game. So it's like it was a real character. So did Alan
mhm.
Wake create Alex Casey, or just is it just a character who existed, and the story, the dark presence pulls him into the threads of altering reality? Like how much of this reality is real, and how much is created by Alan Wake, or like you said, Zane?
Right.
Wild to think that Thomas Zane, after how many decades trapped, figures out the best way to save everybody is to write his own hero. That's a wild take. I wonder if that's in the sequel more. To
Right?
be honest with
I'm
you,
I'm excited to see if there's gonna be more
yeah,
about that, because
yeah,
that's straight out the lore thing that I was listening today, and it made me go, "Huh, that's an
yeah,
interesting take on this whole aspect of this game."
yeah,
To think it's something that deep in this is just, it's crazy that you wouldn't look at the cover of that game and be like, "This shit has a rabbit hole I'm gonna fall into.
yeah.
I'm gonna be up all night thinking about this now."
And that's straight out of Outer Limits. For anybody who ever watched
Yeah.
Outer Limits, as cheesy as that show was, every episode, I would never say it's happy ending. It was an ending, and there's always some kind of
Mhm.
twist, some kind of lesson learned or twist, and that's what this feels like. For Alan Wake is like it ends, but then there's a twist, and then that twist, if given the chance, could be unraveled into something really awesome. And Outer Limits never had the chance to do that because it was a TV show, but here we have a game that can do that. So I'm looking forward to finishing Alan Wake 2 and talking about that with you, Chard, because there's got to be some of the answers, hopefully, in that game that kind of call back onto this because this is fantastic.
I I just love the Twilight Zone picture now. You
Yeah,
living in this world. Like, I love the narrator and the whole, it's so perfectly done that you're like, "Damn it." It sounds so right. I feel like, "Here on Night Springs." You're like, I'm
yeah.
watching Twilight Zone right now. It's not Night Springs." It's just perfect. Everything about the game is just so good, and if you have any appreciation for Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, Millennium, Twin Peaks, X-Files, any of those
All
things,
those shows.
this is
Yeah.
an interactive game that allows you to play as that, and really takes you into a really cool story. It's a very deep
Yeah.
story. Check it out.
Totally worth it. All right. All right, Chart. I think that's an episode. We talked an hour on this game. Can't wait to
Yeah,
talk about the rest of this franchise with you over the
me
next year
too.
or so. Hopefully less than that,
Mhm.
because we got to beat these games. Just want to give a quick shout out to folks in chat. Sinstress, hello. Jer, how you doing? Dwarblack, welcome. Thanks for joining the stream. You can check us out if you like this episode. Please drop us a like, subscribe to our channel on YouTube or on Twitch or any of your favorite podcast apps. You can also find us at pressbecanceled.com or pressb.org. Fuck.com. It's too expensive. We do stream and have episodes every Friday and Monday. And I don't do a whole lot outside of the podcast, but Chard, you do. What are you up to?
I'm actually playing the Remedy Connected Universe as we speak. It's funny because Jake and I discussed. Jake's only on vacation here in a couple weeks for a little while, and I was like, I should get a little further into the RCU so that I can have a little bit more to bounce off of. And then he's like, everybody's out except for you and me. Let's talk Alan Wake. Fuck.
Yeah.
All right. I'll do the speed read and get through it, which is fine. Like I said, I'd already beaten this game, and I'm glad we separated these up into it could be 4 episodes or whatever we're going to do with it. And I've really been waving the Alan Wake flag for a long time, even before I joined the podcast to these guys, because I'm like, it's a really good, guys. You just got to sit down and try it and give it a try. And I'm really happy that Jake uh, got what I was hoping he'd get out of the game, and really did appreciate it to the point where it got him to get into the second one, and he
Yeah.
might play Quantum Break, and he wants to go back to Control, like to unlock all of that stuff again. It makes me really happy because this game deserves a lot of love. It is extremely well done. And I'm happy playing through it again. I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to replay it again. And I'm on chapter 5, and I'm like, I'm so happy I replayed this again.
Yeah.
This is really, really good and really a lot of fun. So come check me out on Twitch, Chardmonk at twitch.tv, and join me as I continue to cruise through the RCU. We'll finish up. I'm on episode 5 of Alan Wake, so we should finish up that this weekend, and then I'm going to start Quantum Break after that, so we can see how all that ties in,
Yeah.
and then Control, and then finally we'll finish up with Alan Wake 2. And my hope is we get to Alan Wake 2 right when the last DLC drops in, so we can have both of those, because I think that's due out in October.
The Lake House, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be
Yep.
interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we are Press B to Cancel. Thanks for listening.